Hello, I'm Tex Mars. In my latest book, Mysterious Monuments, I investigate the Masonic architecture, the occult architecture, and the Illuminati designs of an architectural colossus spreading its tentacles across the globe. One of the features of this architectural colossus is its sexual monuments, its artifacts, its devices of a very vulgar nature. Now, it is not my intent today to dwell on such a vulgar and coarse matter, except to the extent that, regrettably, it is necessary that we understand the true heinous and perverse doctrines of the Illuminati elite. If we do not, then we fail to understand the directions that these evil men and women are in fact taking the people of America and the entire world. And so this study today is entitled Baal's Shaft, Cleopatra's Needle, and Other Phallic Idols and Sexual Monuments Erected and Planted in America and around the world. We will, of course, reveal many secrets of the Masonic craft and that of other secret societies and occult orders as well. Every initiate into the Masonic order takes an oath of obligation in which they pledge, quote, "I will always hail, ever conceal, and never reveal any of the arts, parts, or points of the hidden mysteries of ancient Freemasonry." Well, I have taken no such oath, and therefore I will reveal these hidden mysteries of ancient Freemasonry. You will discover that many of the artifacts, many of the architectural monuments and sexual devices of the Illuminati are in fact in the form of symbols. Why symbols? Foster Bailey, a 33rd degree Mason, in his book The Spirit of Masonry, stated, "A symbol veils or hides a secret, and it is that which veils mysterious forces. These energies, when released, can have a potent effect. We will release them, all right, but we will have a positive effect because today we will unmask the darkness that lies in the so-called sexual energy forces of the Illuminati elite." It is regrettable that America has a history of sexual perversion in many ways. This is High Priest Anton LaVey, founder of the Church of Satan and his followers, in a 1966 ritual. Notice the woman lying in a nude state upon the altar in the worship of Satan. From a scene inside a Masonic temple in the nation of Greece, we see a human sacrifice laying straddled as a five-pointed star on an altar of a secret society. Superimposed are symbols such as the descendant triangle representing hell and the tau symbol of the Royal Arch Freemasonry Society. Of course, the ultimate and most hideous of symbols of Freemasonry comes from their worship of the ancient demon god Baphomet. Most Masons today deny such a worship, but the ancient Knights Templar, which was really the predecessor to today's Freemasons, did indeed worship Baphomet. This is an image of Baphomet from a book by an occultist named Eliphas Levi, who was a high-level Freemason. Baphomet, he was called, androgynous, male and female. Yes, the combination together representing the coming together sexually of illumined man, illumined female. Notice the torch coming out of the head. Notice the lustful horns, the satanic pentagram, and the forehead of this pan-horned goat god. But notice from the genital area, you see the circle of light. You also see the twin serpents wrapped around each other, around the caduceus rod, that is the male sex organ. Again, I assure you, I have no intent at all in any way popularize the sexual nature of the Illuminati elite in its rituals, but rather to expose the darkness inherent in such rituals. Now, this Baphomet symbol can be understood by reference to this drawing of the cosmic nature of man by Rosicrucian member, the Englishman Robert Flood, many years ago. This drawing shows the lower and higher natures of man, and it shows that man's phallus is the occult center of the universe. Man himself, of course, is governed by the great sun god, or Lucifer, seen over his head, providing illumination and enlightenment, at least so the occultists and secret societies say. It is the illumined man, enlightened by this cosmic wisdom and the energy of Lucifer, God of light, who will eventually rule over the entire earth, setting up the new order of the ages and destroying Christianity and other religions and the adherents of those religions whom the Illuminati say are not fit for survival. In the Jewish Kabbalah, another system of magic, we also see this sexual nature. Here in the Kabbalah comes this drawing, the sacred tree of the Sephiroth. It's claimed to represent the cosmos, and it includes the God, the male, and the Shekinah, the goddess female, and the kingdom of Zion, which supposedly will overspread the whole earth someday. Again, we see the overlapping of the Illuminati and the Jewish Kabbalistic teachings. And the foundation of all things, as in all the occult societies, sexually, is the male genitals, the sex generative process. Notice, the very word foundation is found in the phallus area of the great God of the Kabbalah. Now, this is the doctrine of the occult, that sex is the very energy principle of the universe. And through this sexual feature, that in the ancient temples in Egypt, in Rome, in Greece, yes, even in China and South and Central America, the sexual ritual, the yoking together of the male and female, became a central focus and practice. And what monument became representative of this hideous sexual ritual, supposedly that linked men and women to the gods and the goddess? The obelisk. The obelisk, the phallus of the sun god, the great obelisk. These obelisks have risen throughout the world, but especially in the land of Egypt. Dr. Kathy Burns, in her book, Masonic and Occult Symbols Illustrated, tells us the true meaning of the obelisk. It means Baal's shaft. Baal, of course, being a synonym for the devil, the fire god of the ancient Philistines and Canaanites. What does Baal's shaft mean? It is the Baal symbol of his organ of reproduction, the phallus. Dr. Burns says this should be especially shocking when we realize that we have a gigantic obelisk in our nation's capital known as the Washington Monument. Another expert on Masonic symbols and architecture, John Daniels, says that Egypt seems to be the inspiration for this fascination with obelisk magic, the phallus of the sun god Osiris in the Egyptian religion. And the same obelisk magic, he said, is practiced today by America's Illuminati elite. And thus they are into sexual debauchery and idolatry. Phallicism, he says, is the veneration and worship of the male and female sex organs, and it is a perverted doctrine of sun worship. In Babylon, it was practiced. Queen Semiramis, her husband, Nimrod the king, erected an obelisk 130 feet high dedicated to her son, claimed to be the reincarnation of her dead husband, the great sun god. But it was in Egypt that America and its Illuminati seemed to relish and focus so much attention, the ancient Egyptian legends and religion. Chief among these is that the sun god, Osiris, was a consort, a sexual practitioner, with his wife, the great goddess Isis. And from their relationship was produced a son, Horus. There we have the unholy trinity. Now, in these Egyptian legends, it is said that the great sun god, Osiris, was slain by an enemy. And his body was dismembered and cut into various parts. And through magic, his wife, the great queen of the universe, the great queen of the Egyptian religions, Isis, she was able to bring all the parts of the body back together and assemble him, and he was to be resurrected by magic that she possessed. But unfortunately, there was one part of the body missing, the male member. And so she achieved from stone or wood an idol of his phallus, and then she consummated the sex act with this idol made of material substance. And thus, having done so, this became the legend of the obelisk. It is the phallus, the idol, symbolized as this rebrought together sun god, Osiris of ancient Egypt. And so we need to keep this in mind. We need to understand that in the dogma of the Illuminati and its subservient human core, the Masonic Lodge and others, the obelisk represents death and resurrection. Death and resurrection. For any who would say America does not practice the Egyptian religion today, my advice is to take out a $1 bill from your wallet or your purse. Notice the all-seeing eye of Horus and of Osiris, the Egyptian sun god, and the Great Pyramid, and the words Novus Ordo Seclorum, New World Order, in Latin, inscribed thereon. This ancient Illuminati doctrine, as brought to America and the Western world, sees in it the symbol of the double-headed eagle, as shown here in a statue outside the Department of Justice building in Washington, D.C., its consummation. This double-headed eagle is the symbol of Freemasonry, and it represents the androgyny, a combined creature of male and female, symbolizing the principle of the sexual union of the goddess and the god. In ancient Rome, they worshipped Janus, the two-faced god of the sun. They call him the keeper of the keys. Back in ancient Babylon, they worshiped the god of Mammon, or Manmon, Ra. You'll see here a symbol of that great god who sits atop a great beast, the dragon. Notice the double-headed feature of this god of prosperity and riches, Mammon Ra. Now, in Freemasonry, this is an illustration from Sovereign Grand Commander Albert Mackey's book, The History of Freemasonry. The mysteries of the order are said to lie within the portal of the two pillars. One is feminine, one is masculine, Jachin and Boaz. Here are the two pillars. You enter through the two pillars, through this sexual rite, to become an illumined person. In Lincolnshire, England, this is the Freemasons' Hall. Notice again the Egyptian combination and the two great pillars, male and female, Jachin and Boaz. And in many other illustrations of Freemasonry, we see these two great pillars once again, always. And they are found in architecture throughout the United States. These are the brilliantly glazed and colored tiles of the exterior of a store in Los Angeles, California. Using the Art Deco style of architecture, notice how the very clever designers and architects were able to sneak covert, subliminal, sexual messages. Do you see the two triangles, the male entering the so-called genitals of the woman? Look closely. You'll see it. Of course, the obelisk is found throughout the world. Here's one in Jocelyn, France, that commemorated the Battle of the 30, dated back in 1351. And down England, we find an Egyptian-style obelisk dated 1826 to commemorate Major General Robert Ross. On its base are carvings of winged sun orbs and serpents. The obelisk, of course, is not the only symbol of sex, with its hidden messages of the Illuminati that we find in architecture around the world. For example, there are many Gothic cathedrals throughout Europe, Britain, and the United States that have rose windows. Seemingly very innocent, but in fact they represent the sex organ of the woman, the vagina, the rose. This is a drawing of a rosette-shaped domed building by Italian Leonardo da Vinci. Yes, the famous Da Vinci seemed to be into the Renaissance style, which was of the ancient pagan gods and goddesses, which also, of course, worshipped the sex rite. In Moscow, Russia today, a great new building is going up called the Crystal Island. It will be in the shape of a great lotus flower. The London Sunday Times said it was one of the world's greatest projects. It will be the world's largest building. It is being built by the architect Sir Norman Foster, one of the world's leading Illuminatus architects. 701 meters in diameter, costing over $4 billion. It will have 900 luxury apartments, 3,000 hotel rooms, a fitness complex, a museum, and an international school for 500 students, and countless retail stores. Why the lotus flower? Because the lotus flower, also called the lily in many cultures, represents the female vagina. The egg, or oval, sometimes called the lozenge shape, also is very indicative of the female organ. And we find it as the centerpiece on the wall in this painted mural overlooking deliberations of the United Nations Security Council. Notice the very centerpiece is the oval. And do you see the features of that oval? Yes, at the United Nations. It is the centerpiece of the World Diplomacy Corps. Here, in the ruins of Egypt's Temple of Karnak, you'll find the lily or the lotus carved in stone. Do you see its similarity to the sexual organ? On the cover of the New Age magazine back in January 1989 featured a book entitled A Bridge to Light by 32nd degree Mason Rex Hutchins. The symbology looks innocent at first, but look again. It, in fact, symbolizes the male entrance into the female organ and the overflow of seed or semen. And the Masons call this, in their New Age magazine, a bridge to light. Back to the ancient pagan religions, we see the sexual nature of these mystery religions still worshipped by the Illuminati today. This is the snake goddess worshipped in ancient Babylon and Sumeria. Note the sensual aspect of the breast and also the diamond pattern on the covering garment. And of course, in her hands are the serpents. In many places in the British Commonwealth today, such as this scene in Devonport, New Zealand back in 1985, and another scene at the West Dean School in England today, we see practice of a game and a festival called the Maypole. The children go around the Maypole. In ancient days, there were incredible sexual orgies that occurred during the Maypole festival. And what is the Maypole? Of course, it is representative of the phallus of the sun god. Here we have the Tree of Liberty pole. In this English coin designed by Freemason Thomas Spence back in the days of America's revolution against England. This shows Illuminous revolutionaries, angry, but holding a pole, the great Maypole, and at the very top of it is the dismembered head of the Prime Minister of England, William Pitt. And what is this Maypole, this phallus symbol, called on this coin? The Tree of Liberty. Egyptian temples, of course, were beautifully painted and had these great columns that symbolized the phallus of the various gods, and especially of Osiris. Osiris, the sun god, and also the lord of the underworld. And this same symbol became prominent throughout the pagan world. Megaliths, known as the devil's arrows, are still found today in Boroughbridge, England. Here is one such representative. When the first Europeans came to North America, they found that the Native American Indians also were worshiping the sun god, and they bore a great totem idol, in other words, the phallus symbol of the sun god, and they arranged themselves in circles and held up their hands and had great festivities, all designed to honor the great phallus of the sun god. This is an engraving from Theodore de Brie's book, America, dated 1590. In Africa, too, we see the worship of the phallus symbol, the phallus, usually of the sun god. These are so-called phallic herms used by tribalists to worship the dead. This is from Nigeria and Africa, but herms are common in Europe as well. Anyone can see with just a glance the phallic nature of these stone idols. But it is not only Africa, not only Europe, not only Asia where these things are found. This is actually a proposed monument for veterans in South Lyon, Michigan, the state of Michigan in the United States. Here you will find in this drawing of this proposed monument esoteric Masonic symbols including the obelisk, the pillar, the broken column, the black and white checkerboard floor, all integrated into it. In the great Roman Empire, also they worshipped the phallus. This is a Roman copy of a 5th century BC Greek goddess. She holds in her right hand a pine cone affixed to a wooden staff. And what is the magical pine cone? Well, it was said that the deity was empowered to perform supernatural miracles. The pine cone with its many seeds represented the semen of the sun god, and the pole, of course, represents his phallus. In India today, in the religion of Hinduism, we see almost a pure worship of this ancient sex ritual. This scene pictures so-called linga stones with yonis, in other words, the male and female sex organs at a Hindu temple. There's no doubt, and the Hindu gurus would tell you these are the male and female sex organs, and the generative act is a sex ritual still practiced in temples of Hinduism in India today. But it is not only the Hindus. Believe it or not, this carved column displays innumerable phalluses, and it is in the ceiling of the Hall of Private Audience, a royal palace built by Akbar the Great way back in the 16th century. He was the Mughal emperor of India, but Akbar was a Muslim. Yet he took many Hindu wives into his harem, and he decorated the walls of his palace with images of Hindu animal deities. I might mention that this is expressly prohibited by Islamic law, but it did not stop Akbar. Akbar was a ruthless man as well as a sexual pervert. He once slaughtered 40,000 civilians, and he built towers from which he hung their decapitated heads. But he was sexually titillated, biographers say, by Hindu tales of the sexual exploits of their many gods and goddesses. And so he built this hall of private audience for his sexual rituals called Tantra in the Hindu religion. And these multi-phallic columns added visual inspiration to his ritual acts. In the days of the early Christians in Rome, the great god of the sun, Mithra, was the chief competitor to the new religion of Christianity. Here on the stone relief in Modena, Italy, we see this mysterious worship and the sensuous nature of the god Mithra, with all the zodiacal creatures and symbols surrounding him. Inside the fertile symbol also of the oval or the egg. Many say that Islam today is almost a Puritan religion. But perhaps unbeknown even to Muslims, their very mosques display the inherent sexual nature of this religion. Maybe we can understand when we look, for example, at the Blue Mosque in Istanbul, Turkey, why many Muslim men seem to relish the idea of someday going to a paradise and having multiple virgin wives and having constant sex. Look at the towers, the esoteric design, the phallic design of these minaret towers. Yes, the image of sex is unmistakable, although the imams of Islam may say it's not so. In America, of course, many in the Illuminati, especially the Illuminati bloodlines, have many of these same symbols and the artwork and the architecture that relate back to this sexual ritual religion of the ancient mystery religions. The Vanderbilts, for example, reportedly treasured and loved this painting, The Toilet of Venus. It was painted back in 1751 by French artist Francois Boucher. They donated it in 1920 to New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art. Can we find relics of this sexual religion today in places such as Washington, D.C., the federal city, the capital of the United States of America? Indeed, we can. In fact, they inhabit the city, and they are found everywhere. This is a goddess reclining on the rich wooden sculpture that graces an arch inside the United States Supreme Court's reading room. She holds in her right hand the ram's head capital of a pillar, a sexual image that denotes her authority as lawgiver. The goddess as lawgiver for America on top of the United States Capitol. This goddess reigns. She stands atop the U.S. Capitol, a goddess. And she is found elsewhere in Washington, D.C. as well. USA Today newspaper carried this news item with the headline, "Semi-Nudes Lead to Cover-Up at the Justice Department." It seems that George W. Bush, as president, his new Attorney General John Ashcroft was embarrassed by the naked statues of the goddesses at the Justice Department. And so, not wanting the dumbed-down American populace, I suppose, to know what's going on in their capital city in regards to mystery architecture, Attorney General Ashcroft ordered the sexual features of these goddess statues to be covered with material, with fabric. But as soon as he left, I understand the fabric was taken off. And so we still have the nude statues inside the Justice Department, but at the Library of Congress and throughout Washington, D.C. And this goddess figure, this sensuous, lustful goddess that can be traced all the way back to Babylon, Egypt, Rome, Greece, China, Mesoamerica, South and Central America, where they also worship this sexual goddess, can be found around the world. Here we have the University of Texas at Austin's Tower. But there is a great fountain not far from it, and you see the image of the goddess of victory, the winged goddess of victory at this fountain. It was, by the way, at the very top almost of this tower where a madman, Charles Whitman, wielding rifles and pistols in the 60s, killed, shot, or wounded 45 victims. In Paris, France, we find the Fountain of Victory, another fountain of the goddess. Notice the goddess at the very top, holding in her hands a circular wreath, but she stands on top of a phallic pole or tower. Noted Illuminist architect Jean-Jacques Lecoq in the late 18th century, during the horrors of the bloody French Revolution, came up with this design for a stunning phallic monument dedicated to those citizens who were not taken to the guillotine and who were faithful to the principles of the revolution of the Illuminati in France. Notice the phallus shaft, which has the wings of an angelic being, and the serpentine spiral garland going up the phallus pole, representing, of course, the serpent and Lucifer's influence. You find sometimes phallic architecture, sexual monuments, in the most unusual, unexpected places. Take, for example, the Disney movie The Little Mermaid. It evidently is not enough that the movie was advertised with this poster, which has certain, should we say, suggestive images. But The Little Mermaid, that was designed supposedly as a movie for children, has other images. Are they innocent? Well, you judge for yourself. Here we see a video cover of The Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid sitting on the lap of her beau, maybe innocent. But in the background, you see King Midas and some demonic figure to the right, and there is a great, fabulous fantasy castle under the sea. Look closely. Yes, let's look a little closer at this fantasy castle, this shimmering golden light-filled architectural structure. Do you see it? Oh, yes. Could that be? Well, again, you decide for yourself what you're seeing here. Disney, of course, officially says no. This is simply an accident, not intended by the artist for the movie The Little Mermaid. We go across America and the world and we see other images. This is Mercury. Yes, the great god Mercury. Sometimes she was pictured as a he, sometimes as a she, holding a torch of enlightenment. Yes, a symbol of the Illuminati. And where can this be found? On the Union Oil Building a great stone carving in relief, Los Angeles, California. In Great Britain, this goddess statue was put on display in the chambers of Alexander's, Britain's most famous male witch. But wait! Here we find another statue of the goddess. This is a proposed statue, not built yet. It is entitled The Spirit of Euston, and it seems to have a striking resemblance to the witchcraft goddess statue from Great Britain, does it not? Look at the voluptuous nature of this great goddess. Now, certain architects and city fathers and the rich of Euston have proposed this Spirit of Euston statue be built and erected in the harbor of Houston, Texas. Its proposed height, 555 feet tall. Now you multiply that in occult numerology by the number of inches, 12 inches to a foot, so 12 times 555. And that comes to 6,660 inches. In occult numerology, the zeros are never counted, and therefore the numerical coding of the Spirit of Euston, the great goddess statue to be built, now being proposed by the city's power brokers, is coded numerologically 666. We go back to Hollywood, California again, and we visit the Western Building in Hollywood, California, which once housed our Hollywood movie peoples. And what figure would be more appropriate than the naked statue, again, of the god Mercury, who also in the ancient mystery religion is called Hermes. By the way, on the same building, the Western Building, is this interesting stone carving. Is that a devil with horns? You decide for yourself. A very unusual statue is found in Turin, Italy, in front of a church called the Great Mother of God Church. Seemingly a Catholic cathedral, overlooking the city, this great statue of a woman stands. She holds in her left hand a cup. Revelation 17 speaks of Mystery Babylon, mother of harlots, drunken with the blood of the saints of Jesus, and she holds in her hand a cup full of the filth of her abominations. Is this the mother of harlots? Why, if it is not, is she holding the same cup that is described in the book of Revelation? In New York City, there are other signs of phallicism. At Rockefeller Center, this is Rockefeller's golden boy, the naked son of the great Greek god Zeus. This is Prometheus. It is said that he gave fire to man, thus becoming man's benefactor. This naked god, this golden boy of the Illuminati elite, inside this eternal ring or circle. But in fact, occultists say that Lucifer, according to this legend, gave holy fire to man in the form of sexual passion and activity, the generative act. As we have revealed already, Illuminism is permeated with hidden sexual dogmas and symbology. The Rockefellers, of course, being one of the richest Illuminati dynasties and bloodlines in the world today. You've heard of the Music City Rockettes. Well, these are the Egyptian Rockettes carved on the exterior of the Rockefeller Center. These 5 Egyptian-esque dancing chorus girls seem to be wearing only stockings, boots, a neck piece, and Egyptian queen headdresses. Also in New York City, we find AT&T's headquarters. Designed by architect Philip Johnson, it stands exactly 666 feet tall. Revelation 13 reveals that the beast of Revelation, the Antichrist, will have a number, and that number is 666. Once again, the golden boy winged, and in his hand he upholds 3 great thunderbolts in the form of X, the sign of Osiris, the Egyptian sun god. He stands atop the globe, showing his dominion over the earth. Is this Lucifer reigning over the earth? Could it be? the Golden Boy. AT&T, however, says no. This is the spirit of communication. Their building, they admit, is designed as an Egyptian hypno-style hall. An Egyptian hypno-style hall? North of the United States, we move to Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, where another Golden Boy stands atop the dome of this massive building, built according to Masonic Greek design with Egyptian flourishes. There are Sphinx sculptures on the roof, and there are astrological, occult, numerological calculations designed into this building, put there by Freemason architects. Again, we have the son of Zeus, the great Golden Boy. But it is in the United States where we find the most interesting of monuments, again returning to the obelisk. It seems the Americans learned of the obelisk from Great Britain. However, because in Philadelphia we have an obelisk that resembles many graveyards and cemeteries found in Great Britain. Here is the tombstone of Commodore William Bainbridge at Christ Church Burial Ground, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But the British Empire in Dublin, Ireland had this mausoleum built for a very wealthy family called the Allen family. It's designed as a tomb. Look very carefully, there's an arch and a tomb for this obelisk. In France, we find the Plaza de la Concorde obelisk and fountain. Egyptian hieroglyphics predominate on this great phallus of the sun god, 220 tons, 75 foot tall, erected in France in the 1830s, brought over from Egypt. It's called the Luxor in Paris. In Rome, Italy, we find an Egyptian obelisk, again in the most unusual of places, standing inside a wheel or circle designed as a great key, the Vatican. Here we have the Pope of Rome with his fish-shaped, that's right, Dagon, the fish god-shaped hat, looking out over the throngs of Catholic faithful who are gathered around the obelisk and the sun wheel during his annual New Year's Day speech and blessing. Why would the Catholic Church and the Vatican erect a great Egyptian obelisk, symbol of the sun god Osiris, right in front of the Vatican? Then we turn to Cleopatra's Needle. In London, England, near the River Thames, is a great Egyptian obelisk that was brought over from Egypt and erected near the government buildings of Whitehall. It was a gift from Muhammad Ali, Viceroy of Egypt, to England. It's called Cleopatra's Needle. Now, interestingly enough, there is another Cleopatra's Needle, an Egyptian obelisk, erected in New York Central Park, May 18, 1879. This project for Central Park in New York was financed by railroad magnate William Vanderbilt. A Masonic ritual was naturally conducted on site as this fabulous phallic monument was raised. This is an obelisk found in a Phoenix, Arizona public park. And now in the state of Indiana, at Keystone Crossing, a shopping mall in Indianapolis, an obelisk is displayed at the entrance. Another unusual obelisk can be found at New York City's historic St. Paul's Chapel, almost unseen to many passers-by. It seems to be an eyesore inside a fenced-in cemetery next to a church. In San Jose, California, is the headquarters of a Rosicrucian order, AMORC. It claims over 250,000 members in over 100 countries. Reportedly, Senator Edward Ted Kennedy is a member. And yet Sirhan, who was accused and was convicted of the assassination of Senator Bobby Kennedy, Teddy's brother, also is a Rosicrucian. This is a brochure printed and published and offered by the Rosicrucians. They say, master your life with the magic, of course, and supernaturalism of the Egyptian obelisk. On Biscayne Bay near Miami, Florida, at the estate of James Deering, one of the heirs of the International Harvester Corporation, Vizcaya, this great estate, what do we find? This pool. And on the grounds also, Egyptian obelisk. They continue to be built around the world. This is a memorial to 9/11 World Trade Center victims by local artist Randy Vaden, dedicated in Knoxville, Tennessee on September 11, 2003. It has a copper dome, 4 columns, and a shiny black obelisk within a circular base, all seeming to be examples of Masonic design. It is said that the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C. is the world's tallest standing obelisk, but some say not so. That in fact at 570 feet, 15 feet taller, is a great Masonic tower built outside of Houston and Pasadena, Texas. It is the San Jacinto Monument that commemorates the victory of the Texas pioneers against Santa Anna and the Army of Mexico. Some say, however, it's technically not an obelisk, but we do see the great Masonic star at the very top. The Lone Star, of course, is the same as the blazing star of Freemasonry. And now let's turn to that Washington Monument and study it a bit. The word obelisk comes from the Greek obeliskos, which means pointed pillar. Barbara Walker, in the reference book entitled The Women's Dictionary of Symbols and Sacred Objects, says that the old joke that calls the United States' largest modern obelisk Washington's greatest erection is not so incongruous after all, because the original Egyptian obelisks were quite seriously conceived as phallic. The towering height of the Washington Monument is indicated as we see a Continental Airlines aircraft descending toward Reagan National Airport. 555 feet tall. Again, multiply by 12 inches, you get 6,660 inches. You take away the 0 in occult numerology, and the Washington Monument, as the Spirit of Houston proposed statue of the goddess, is exactly coded 666. Some call this the phallus of Neptune or Poseidon. In this Google aerial view photo of the capital city's Masonic-built Washington Monument, we see the sexually suggestive phallic point within a circle design of Freemasonry. But we see the reflected shadow of the monument as well. And this reveals that the Washington Monument, this great obelisk of Egypt, is essentially a great sundial. Incidentally, many of the stones, at least one stone, came from each of the state's Masonic lodges. In other words, 50 stones that were placed in the foundation area of this Washington Monument were donated, one from each of the 50 states' Masonic lodges. Isn't it wonderful to know that you have stones from all the 50 states that have been integrated into our nation's premier monument? In the USA Today newspaper, September 23, 2002, was this article concerning the witches having a ritual in Washington, D.C., a circular ritual around, of all buildings, well, naturally, the Washington Monument. It seemed to be a perfect setting for their unholy rituals. According to the caption, this circle of harmony was a ritual that continued for exactly 33 hours. 33, of course, is the highest degree ritual of Freemasonry. Is there a connection, then, between witchcraft and Freemasonry? Well, isn't it true that the Masons themselves call their order the Craft? This is an incredible view of the Washington Monument. Notice the circle underneath it. So you see the great phallic symbol, bathed and showered with the sun's rays, actually being planted inside the earth, Mother Earth, the great Mother Goddess. Her circle, of course, the circle represents the vaginal area. In one of the issues of the Scottish Rite Journal, June 1997, this is the official publication of International Freemasonry, Washington, D.C. They commemorated the Washington Monument. Notice the words, Freemasonry celebrates the Washington Monument. They talk about it being a Masonic tradition, and they discuss the Masonic stones that I told you about, the 50 that come from the states. The Freemasonry order also solves the riddle of the number 555. Here we have a Masonic tracing board with many symbols related to the luminous dogma regarding the death of self and resurrection in the third degree of the lodge. The candidate in that degree is transformed into a type of deity. Observe that the tracing board displays the numbers 555 on the casket, laid out in the form of a triangle V. And so, this 555 represents death and regeneration, as does the great Egyptian obelisk and the Washington Monument. If we go back the time of the founding fathers of the United States of America, we find more examples of the Egyptian obelisk and of this Masonic mystery religion. This is an obelisk erected in Boston in 1766 with images, however, of King George and Queen Charlotte of Great Britain. But the most incredible, shocking, mind-numbing monument of all is George Washington's tomb, or should I say, Egyptian mausoleum. This is a drawing from a book entitled Clausen's Commentaries on Morals and Dogma, authored by Henry C. Clausen, 33rd degree Sovereign Grand Commander of Freemasonry. The numbers give you indication of the various monuments. Now, the number 2 is the Egyptian queen. She, it is said in the Freemasonry legend, was the queen of King Solomon of ancient Israel. Now, the number 3 represents the palace of King Solomon. And across the courtyard, you'll see the 2 great obelisks and the residence, the mansion, you might say, the palace of the queen, Solomon's betrothed, as number 2. So recall this now again. Going inside the walled city of Jerusalem, the holy city, you come to the Queen's Palace, number 2, and in front of it, of course, at the entrance are the 2 great Egyptian obelisks. Now compare that design in a Masonic textbook with this one done by French Illuminist architect Gaete, a contemporary of Jefferson, Madison, and other American founding fathers. Notice the Egyptian theme. This is a sketch by the artist for a structure. It is built, notice, on the model of the Egyptian temple at Thebes, with, again, the Queen's Palace and the twin obelisk. And now we go to the actual tomb, or the mausoleum, of President George Washington at Mount Vernon, his estate. Notice the very same thing. The twin obelisk and the Egyptian Queen's Palace, where his body is interred. What we have here is a picture of the dead president enters into the womb of the goddess, from which he will be reborn and regenerated and reincarnated. It was not only George Washington, but seemingly many others of the early American founding fathers. This is a Bunker Hill monument in Charleston, Massachusetts. Until the Washington Monument, this is the highest obelisk in the world, built by prominent Freemasons, completed in 1843, made of granite. More than 150,000 people, according to newspapers at the time, attended the opening ceremony and ribbon cutting for this incredible structure. Famous American orator Daniel Webster gave the keynote speech, and he made clear this was a sexually designed monument. This, by the way, is another granite obelisk in a place called Washington Square in Charleston, South Carolina. It commemorates the Confederate soldiers of this area who served under General Robert E. Lee during the Civil War. Exactly 45 feet tall. 4 plus 5 equals 9. And 9, the number, is concealing the number 666. 6 plus 6 plus 6 equals 18. 1 plus 8 equals 9. In this great tomb, the Lincoln Tomb, at Oak Ridge Cemetery in Springfield, Illinois, we find the body of USA President Abraham Lincoln. And what is its architectural form? A great Masonic and Egyptian obelisk. According to the record books, the assassination of Lincoln at his coronary, the coroner found in Lincoln's pants pocket a talisman, a small obelisk charm. It appears that Lincoln believed in the powers of the obelisk for resurrection, and who knows, perhaps erection. Can we prove that other founding fathers also were implicated with this sexual phallus symbol, the Egyptian obelisk? We can indeed. This obelisk is the gravesite of President and Founding Father James Madison. And this one is the Egyptian obelisk gravesite of Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson was not a Freemason. However, in his writings, Jefferson effusively praises Adam Weishaupt, the Bavarian founder of the Order of the Illuminati. According to Jefferson, Weishaupt was a wonderful man, in fact, quote, a great philanthropist. Let us now take a modern journey to phallic sexual monuments across the world. We'll even visit and take a look at a few of the architects, perhaps, of this incredible architecture. This, I am told, is the actual logo and symbol of a noted architect from Chesterfield, Missouri. Take a look at this. Notice his logo. What does that signify? Do you see it? And what is his name? Can this be true? Dick Bush Architects? Timeless designs for today's lifestyles? Is this some kind of a joke? Illuminist architect Mies van der Rohe, who says that architecture exhibits the will of the age, is shown here with a very sexy model companion, pointing out some of the finer things of one of his designs. This is a proposed architectural design by Frenchman Ledoux. It demonstrates the phallic sexual doctrine and worship of the generative act by the Masons and other Illuminists. It's entitled, believe it or not, Temple of Sexual Instruction. The design speaks for itself. Jean Nouvel was winner of the 2008 Pritzker Architectural Prize. For what architectural achievement did he win this prize? Well, Barcelona, Spain's Agbar Tower. This is that tower. Does it resemble anything that you can imagine or think about? It is said that Barcelona, Spain, has been called the city of the phallus due to its many phallic-related architectural objects. But even in the United States, in San Diego, California, a controversy was ignited, according to the San Diego Union Tribune newspaper, because of the proposed building of this structure, which, according to the newspaper, looks like a giant phallus. The newspaper commented on the organic form of the monument. Voters on an architectural internet website chose this building, the new state capitol in Florida, as the world's most phallic building. I think I can understand why, can't you? We traveled to Brasilia, Brazil to see the Secretariat building, which also has phallic symbology. In Ypsilanti, Michigan, this water tower certainly deserves mention, as does this item on a street in the city of Portland, Oregon. And so we have taken a tour around the world, and we've seen only a small portion of the phallic architecture of the Illuminati and its many sexual monuments, all of which can be traced back to the mystery religions of the ancients. Is this a vulgar group of men? Yes, it is. Is it a sensuous, perverted group of men? Yes, they are. But more dangerous than their sexual doctrines and sexual rituals is their goal of overtaking humanity and creating what they call the new order of the ages. Their goal, destroy most of humanity and set up a great global plantation of the super rich. Will this goal be accomplished? Maybe so. Will it be accomplished in our lifetime? Perhaps. But will it last? Will it stand? What did God say about it? This is Tex Mars, and thank you for viewing this documentary on Baal Shaft and Cleopatra's Needle.